Hello, friends. Welcome to another session. And today we'll be focusing on some key concepts that will be needed in our subsequent use cases. Now, day 5 and day 6, I'll be focusing on key concepts that I need you to really understand. Please feel free to rewatch this video and make sure you are used to, you really understand, so that when we get to the use cases, you can then confidently be able to use those concepts going forward. All right. So now, up to now, we've been dealing with just one table, and then we've looked at various commands like select, from, where, group by, having, order by. So we are used to that. We know that by now. And for those that may just be watching this but they have not gone through our previous sessions, please, if you need to, please feel free to do that so that you can confidently be able to follow on this particular session. Now, for this concept, I'm going to be just be using um, a slide so that it can really, you guys can really understand this. So now we have two tables. Now, how do we join these two tables? Okay, how do we confidently join these two tables to make sure that we are not losing any data? There are no issues with the way we are connecting these two tables together. That takes us to a key concept, which is the join clause. Now, the join clause do allow us to combine rows from two or more tables based on a common column between the tables. Now, we do have different types, but I want to talk about four main types in this particular level, right? So the first one is the inner join. So what does that do? It returns records that have matching values in both tables. And then we have the left join, and you can also call it left outer join. Both works. What does that do? It returns all records from the left table and the match records from the right table. At this point, don't just relax. We're going to actually go through some example, do some demo, make sure you really get it, okay? But just take note of this definition. The right join is just the opposite of the left join, and what it does is that it returns all records from the right table and the match records from the left table. Now, the full outer join is a combination of the left and the right join. So what it does is actually that it returns all records when there is a match in either the left or the right table. All right. Now, this is a pictorial view of what I just explained, and you can always save this and make sure that you keep this in your mind. And then when we begin to look at these scenarios, always make sure that this will always help you to remember. Now, for the syntax, this is what the syntax look like. Basically, select star from table 1. Now, this table 1 becomes our left table, and then the inner join. Table 2 then becomes our right table. Okay, the inner join here, right? The inner join you're seeing right here, right? This inner join can also be replaced with left join, right join, full outer join. So it's just, this is where we define the different types of join that we really want to perform in this particular query. And then this is also where we then, the on that we have here, operator here, is saying that what keys do we want to use to match, right? To say, okay, in this case we are saying table 1 dot key, table 2 dot key, but this is really what the syntax look like. All right, so let's look at some examples and then we go from there. Now, if you look at these two tables, we do have pro.sample and then the sales sample. Now, I've pointed out some few things here. I've pointed out this particular this particular record, and I'll tell you why. The same thing here, I pointed out this record. Now, when you look at this, first thing you need to identify what column is common. In this case, the product key is common here, and the product key is common between these two tables, right? Now, if you look at the record itself, you then ask yourself what record is common. You can see 771 here, 771 here, up to 773. Now, the reason why I pointed this out is that 799 doesn't exist in this table, the same way that 4 doesn't exist in this table, and that was on purpose, okay, to be able to explain the concept. Now, if I give you a test right now saying that if you join this table in a join, think of that set that we went through, what record do you think we'll be able to access? Okay, I'll let you guys pause the video, try to imagine it, or try to come up with an answer. Actually, the answer, this is what the answer look like. Okay, you can feel free to pause before you say the answer, so you kind of just make sure you understand this concept. Now, when you join the two tables, right, so you'll be able to have access to this record, right? So the join is really so much about the record, not so much about the attribute, because regardless, we'll still have access to all the attributes in all the tables. However, we are particular about the records. If you look at this record there, like I mentioned, we only have access to these three particular records based on the product ID that we are matching, right? And that tells us why it shows us how inner join really works. Now, when you get to left join, right? So we talked about left join. If this is our left table, right? We've also identified that product sample is our left table, sales sample is our right table. We do say for left join, we'll have access to all the records in the left table, and then we only have access to records that matches the one in the left table, right? So when you do that join, this is what it looks like, right? You can see we have all access to all the record in the left table, and then we only have access to the matching record in the right table. The ones that are not matching, you replace it with null. Please take note of that. Okay, and then for the right join is just the opposite, right? So this become the right, this also is left, and at the same time what happens is that we have access to all the records on the right table, and then we only have access to the matching record on the left table, and the ones that are not matching replaces with null. Okay, and then the same thing here as well. When you do your full outer join, what then end up happening here is that it's a combination of left and right join, so it allow you to have access to all the records, and then the ones that are not matching replace it with null, and the ones that are not matching on the left table as well replace with null. Okay, so now having done this, let's go and see from our lab and really see to make sure that this work as expected. Now, before this class, I've gone ahead to create a schema and couple of tables, right? So I'm going to share that query with you guys so you can also practice it on your own lab. Okay, so let's say we have select star, and then we have this sample product we just talked about, and then we run that. Okay, what does that give us? Exactly what we see in that slide. All right, so this is going to be our left. I'm going to call this left. Okay, so that you take note of that. Okay, so you can see it has 4 rows, right? So let's take note of that, and then we're just going to copy this. Let's copy this so we don't have to write it again or type it again. All right, so and then we would access the sample sales. Okay, so let's access the sample sales here, and then we can see the same 4 records. Okay, now, and then we call this right, so we'll say this is right table. Okay, so that we are really clear. Okay, and then so now let's start some joins so that we can see what happens. We've identified or seen that we have 4 records in each of the left table and the right table, product and the sales table. Okay, now let's do the join, and I also show you the code, but we're going to actually write the code here. All right, so here we're going to call these products for the sake of simplicity, and it's a good practice actually for you to always alias your table name. We can put as well, but most times we don't put as, but I've showed you in the previous sessions that alias can go with as or without as well, and it should work fine. But in this case I'm going to use as just so that it's very explicit. Now let's start with the inner join. So I'm going to say inner join here, and I'm going to copy this table. Okay, I'm going to copy this table, and I'm going to call it sales. And then remember what the syntax look like. Then we'll define our on, and then we're going to use our, we're going to say product key. Okay, product underscore id, and then also we can just copy everything here and paste it right here, and then we'll call this sales. Okay, now when you run this, what do you expect? So we expect three record. Also we expect to have access to, in each of these in each of this table, we only have three attributes, right? So let's run it actually so I can explain. So when you run with inner join, you can see basically here that before we have four records for this is the left table and this is the right table, right? So you can see what's happening is that two records have been dropped, one from the left table and one from the right, and that's exactly what we expect because they are not going to be matching based on the product key, and that's exactly what we have seen so far. All right, so let's comment this out now. Before we comment it out, I just want to show you that you might see people just use join as well. It will work as expected. Also, it will work the same way like inner join, but guys, don't I always prefer to write inner join so that it's very explicit, not just for myself alone but also for others that might be looking at my code. All right, so but you can see both of them work, which is the point here. All right, so let's comment this out. Let's talk about the left join here. So let me write left join. All right, now we've typed left join, so let's put left join here. All right, so what do we expect? We expect to see all the records in the left and only the match one on the right. Let's run that just to make sure that it works. Awesome, guys. You can see it works as expected. The only thing I will just do here is I will add order by one. You already know what one means by this time. So you can see that all the records in the left table have been displayed, and then only the matching one in the right table, and the ones that are not matching replaces with null, which is what we expect. So that's great. So that means that it's working as expected. Okay, now for the right table, before sorry about that, before I go to the right table, I just want to show you that both works. There are different way you can write the left join and it should work as expected. So here you can switch it to left outer as well. Most of the SQL platform, either T-SQL, Postgres, PackSQL, most of them should work with either of these variation of joins. Okay, so when you run it again, you can see work as expected. So that's just what I wanted to point out here. Let's quickly go to right join, and this is going to be our right join. Let me copy this. Okay, and let's call this right join. All right, so now with the right join, we're just going to leave it at we won't put the outer this time around, but I like to put it outer as well, just to make it explicit. You know what, I'm going to actually put the outer here and then run this. Beautiful. Now when you run, you can see it work as we expect. All the records in the right table are displaying, and only the match one on the left table, which is great. Okay, and the last one but not the least here is going to be the full outer join. Okay, and let's okay, let me just do full outer join. All right, so now let's run this and then let's switch this one to full outer join. Okay, and then when you run this, you would see that we'll now have access to all the values in both tables. So now you now see we have 5 records. What's happening is that because we have access to all the values, right, in the right and in the left, guys, that is really how the different type of joins works. I want to encourage you to practice this, watch it over and over, get your head around it. Another way, just before I wrap up, is that you want to also, sometimes you might want to access the product table. Like for example, you see product ID. How does a computer know which one you want to access? So you need to sometimes put in the alias. So for example, I can say product, all the attribute in product, as well as say sales, and all the attribute in sales. Okay, and it work the same way. So, and also, the asterisk just shows us all the column. Then you can also specify specific column, but that is really how you can access individual column if you don't need all the columns, right? But guys, this is how exactly join works. Just make sure you practice very well, you really understand it before you move on. Okay. And if you have questions, you know what to do, put it in the comment section and we'll be more than happy to answer your question. Thank you so much for joining us on this session. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next session.